in this lesson, we will be answering one of the questions from the ALM Octane user discussion forum. So let's take a look on the question. So the question which was asked is there a way to transfer copy values from a higher ranking entity to the level entity below? So this means if, for example, the user is entering and maintaining user-defined fields on an epic level, can those values from the user-defined field, can they be transferred to the features when they are created for this specific epic? So let's take a look how this can be solved. So basically there are two solutions as referenced by Alex. You have first the business rules, which can call a webhook trigger, and this will then update the get the values from the epics and update the features accordingly. Or the second solution will be to add a custom action as a button, which can also solve the action. But this is more like you have to click all the time when you want to update something. So we will focus on the first option, and we have implemented this already. So let's take a look how it looks like once it is implemented. So on my ALM Octane project, in the backlog module, I have already one epic and one feature, and on the epic level I can see that I have the general fields and so on, and I have a user defined field called technology stack. So in this case it's just a string field I need to populate, and whenever a feature is created I would like to take this value from the epic and apply it on the feature level. So I have already currently one feature created, and the technology stack is empty because at that time I have not implemented the rule. So let's see how it looks like if it is implemented. So we can write here by items, and we can also look at the value of this field. So technology stack, you can see it's empty, and once I add it, I need to refresh the entity, and I can see it has taken over the value which was on the details of the epic. If I would change it from here, so let's say I change it and say this is mobile technology, save it here, and if I create an additional feature, so this only hooked to the create event of Octane. So let's say this is we say here this is shopping cart. Value is empty, and now it should take the latest value, which is the mobile technology. So let's see how this can be implemented. So what I've done is, let's go to the rules. In the rules, I've created on the feature level, when it gets for the submission mode new, I've created a webhook where I have a web service which is being called. So this is the URL I'm calling, and I'm passing here the parent ID. So the parent itself as an object, I'm passing to this URL, and I'm receiving it on the implementation, and then I'm changing the according feature which is created based on the field values of the epic. In Python, I've created a webhook implementation. So there is web service, this webhook demo running on my Python Flask server implementation. If you want to know how you can set up a webhook server for ALM Octane business rules, you can go to the playlist of webhooks, and it explains exactly how to do it. So basically this is what I've been set it up, and what I'm doing here is I'm calling this from ALM Octane. So here exactly this is the URL, the webhook service I'm calling, and in Python on the webhook I'm just receiving the different parameters from ALM Octane, like the shared space ID, workspace ID, as well as the data. So the data belongs to exactly the data which I've defined. So it's data here, name and the parent information. Yeah, so let's go back here. We have the name, entity name. The ID comes automatically. You have the entity type as well. And you have the parent ID, which I'm receiving. And using this information, I have now the feature ID and the parent ID. So once I receive those information on the creation of a feature, I grab the entity ID of the feature and from the parent. From the parent, I read basically the field value for technology stack, and using the entity ID, which is the feature ID, I update the feature with the same value which was provided in the entity stack of the epic. So here we can see I'm just logging in using the informations, and once I'm logged in, I read here the epic itself, the value of this special user defined field. I save the value here on the epic tag, and from here I update the feature. And so I basically call the feature with the ID which was created and say tag underscore UDF is exactly the same value like I have on the epic level, and then I hit a put which changes and updates the feature and log out from ALM Octane. So this basically is the simple implementation. It is a bit complex as it requires webhooks, but once you are in, it's very easy to manage. And just to get started with the webhooks, you can go to the academy, to the ALM Octane Academy, and take a look on the playlist working with webhooks, and it will explain exactly how you can set up a Python server to get started working with webhooks.